The American Pathfinders were a group of paratroopers during World War II. One of their most important missions occurred on D-Day, June 6, 1944, the day of the largest air, land, and sea attack in history. The goal of the D-Day attack was to capture several beaches in France from the Germans, who controlled most of Europe. From these beaches, the Americans, the British, and the Canadians would attack the Germans and try to win the war. The Pathfinders' mission was to set up landing areas near the beaches of Normandy, France, so the main paratroop units of the United States 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions could parachute down as safely as possible. But the Pathfinders had to act fast. They had only 1 hour before 1,000 planes were supposed to begin dropping more than 20,000 American paratroopers over Normandy. Shortly after midnight, the Pathfinders jumped out of their planes into the dark night sky, with hopes of landing near Utah Beach in Normandy. Unfortunately, many Pathfinders did not land where they were supposed to land, because the pilots of their planes had changed direction to avoid heavy clouds and enemy fire. The first task of the Pathfinders was to find all the other members of their unit. For some, this was impossible. The next task of the Pathfinders was to set up beacons, machines that would flash signals to the planes, at the landing zones where the main units of paratroopers would try to land. Since many of the Pathfinders had landed in the wrong location, they weren't able to mark the right landing zones. Some Pathfinders lost their beacons when they landed. They tried to mark their landing zones with flares and smoke. Because the enemy might hear their conversations, the Pathfinders were not allowed to use their radios, so they could not warn the paratroopers that the landing zones might be wrongly marked. When it was time for the 20,000 paratroopers to jump, clouds and enemy fire got in the way again. The paratroopers landed all over the countryside, sometimes many miles from their landing zones. The Pathfinders spent most of the early morning searching the woods and guiding lost paratroopers to their units. The landings of the Pathfinders and the paratroopers who followed them were observed by the enemy. And by early morning, several German army and artillery units had begun to attack them. It was dangerous work. There were many injuries, and the medics, soldiers trained to save lives, were kept very busy. But the Pathfinders were well trained. They won many small battles and captured several enemy soldiers. By nightfall of D-Day, June 6, 1944, the Pathfinders had achieved many of their goals. They had helped the paratroopers land, and they had helped to capture important bridges and hills. Most importantly, American, British, and Canadian troops landing from thousands of ships anchored nearby were able to capture the beaches. This job would have been much more difficult without the hard work of the Pathfinders. It was the beginning of the end of World War II for the Germans.